Back in the day, people did wild things to look good. I mean, way wilder than today's makeup or diets. They used animal poop, poison, even worms, all for beauty. Some trends hurt, others killed, but people kept trying them. I dug into history and found what I believe are the top 10 strangest ones. These stories shocked me, and they'll shock you too. From ancient times to the 1900s, people went all out. So, I'm sharing them with you. Hit like, subscribe, and let's jump in. Stick around because number 5 was so deadly it doubled as a weapon. Let's go. Number 10. Croc Cure. Back in ancient times, people in Greece and Rome chased smooth skin with crocodile dung. They scooped it fresh from the Nile or local rivers, dried it under the sun, and turned it into a beauty trick. Folks like the rich Romans mixed about a pound of it, which is roughly 0.45 kilograms, into their bath mud every week. They believed it kept their skin soft and young, even though no proof backed it up. Record says Cleopatra's lover, Mark Antony, soaked in these dung baths around 40 BC. Meanwhile, Greek women smeared it on their faces as a mask, leaving it for hours. They didn't stop there. Doctors then claimed it healed cuts and burns. About 1 in 3 medical scrolls from 500 BC mentioned it. The dung had minerals like calcium, sure, but studies later showed it did little for wrinkles. Still, they kept at it for centuries, from 600 BC to AD 200. Public baths in Rome used over 500 gallons of mud-dung mix yearly for the elite. Regular folks couldn't afford it since crocs weren't cheap to hunt. Washing it off took effort too. They spent whole afternoons scrubbing with olive oil and water. According to historians, only about 5% of people back then, which was mostly the wealthy, tried this. By AD 300, smarter skincare like honey took over, but the dung fans swore by it. I couldn't believe people went that far, but wait until you hear what others did with something even stranger. Number 9. Skullcraft. In ancient times, Mayans and Incas changed their babies' heads for beauty. They started a few days after birth when skulls were soft. Parents tied tight cloth around the head or used wooden boards to press it. They kept this up for months, making the skull grow long and pointed like a cone. This began around 2000 BC and went on for over 2,000 years. In Mayan cities like Chichen Itza, about 20% of elite skeletons found had stretched skulls, according to archaeologists. The Incas in Peru did it too. Over 400 stretched skulls turned up in digs from AD 100 to 600. They thought it showed high status. Only rich people, like nobles or priests, did this. Historians estimate maybe 1 in 10 families could afford it. A long skull said you were important, maybe even holy. It took steady work. Boards pushed about 2 pounds of force, or 0.9 kilograms on the head each day. By age 5, the shape was set forever. Studies in 2010 proved it didn't affect brain function, so brains stayed fine. Still, it made them look different from everyone else. Moms adjusted the clothes daily to keep it safe and even. Some Peruvian skulls stretched 6 inches longer than usual, or about 15 centimeters. Regular people kept normal heads since they lacked the time or gear. By AD 1500, this habit died out as new styles came along. That was a wild idea, and it gets crazier when you see what people used next. Number 8. Lotus pain. In ancient China, small feet were the beauty goal, so starting around AD 900, they bound girls' feet. Moms began when daughters were 5 or 6 years old. They soaked the feet in hot water, cut the toenails short, and broke all the toes except the big one. Then they wrapped the feet tight with cotton cloth, about 10 feet long or 3 meters. This shrank the feet to just 3 or 4 inches, or roughly 7 to 10 centimeters. They called them lotus feet because the shape looked like a flower bud. Historians found out that by the Sung dynasty, over 50% of rich women had bound feet. The process hurt a lot, girls cried as their bones snapped and walking became tough. They redid the wrapping every day, keeping the feet tiny. Expert estimates about 10% died from infections like gangrene, since blood couldn't flow right. Still, it lasted nearly 1,000 years. In the 1200s, about 2 million women had lotus feet across China, based on old records. Small feet meant better marriage chances, since men wanted wives who didn't work outside. Poor families copied the rich, binding about 1 in 4 girls by the 1800s. It took hours to care for them. Moms unwrapped, cleaned, and rewrapped the feet weekly, using up to 5 hours each time. The pain never stopped, as some women limped forever. Shoes for lotus feet were tiny, sewn by hand, and only 3 inches long. By 1912, the government banned it after reformers fought for years. Doctors said it crushed bones and twisted legs, leaving scars for life. Only about 1% of women kept doing it secretly after that, old surveys show. I thought that was the limit, but hold on, there's something even more surprising coming up. Number 7. Blood drain. In old Europe, pale skin meant you were rich, so women drained their blood to get that look. This started around AD 500 and stuck around until the 1700s. They grabbed a knife and slit a vein, usually on the arm, letting out about a cup of blood, or 0.24 liters. Some used leeches instead. About 5 or 6 stuck to the skin, sucked out the same amount in 20 minutes. Doctors back then said it fixed the body's balance, but women just wanted to look ghostly white. Historians reported about 25% of noble women tried it, since tanned skin meant you worked in fields. They did this a lot. Some bled themselves once a month, losing up to 10% of their blood each time. Records show over 1,000 leeches were sold daily in cities like Paris by the 1600s. It wasn't safe, since too much blood loss made them dizzy, and some passed out. Old medical logs suggest that about 1 in 20 died from infections or weakness. Still, they kept going. Pale skin showed you stayed inside, away from sun and hard jobs. In England, Queen Elizabeth I's court loved the look. Her ladies lost about 2 pints yearly, or 0.95 liters, to stay trendy. The process took time. They sat for an hour watching blood drip into a bowl, then bandaged up with cloth. Leeches were easier but left marks. Like up to 10 red spots lasted weeks. By the 1800s, science caught up. Doctors proved it caused anemia, and deaths piled up with over 500 cases linked to it in France alone from 1700 to 1800. So it faded out. Still, some women swore it gave them a soft, youthful glow. Only about 5% of regular people tried it, as they couldn't afford leeches, which cost a day's pay. After that shocking trick, you'll want to know what else people tried to look good. Number 6. Arsenic treats. In the early 1900s, women craved perfect skin, so they ate arsenic cookies. This kicked off around 1900 and lasted until the 1920s. Companies baked tiny amounts of arsenic, about 0.01 grams per cookie, into these treats. They sold them as a beauty fix, promising clear skin and a fresh glow. Ads claimed 1 cookie a day smoothed out blemishes. Thousands jumped on it, with over 50,000 boxes shipped yearly in the US alone, according to sales logs. Women popped them like candy, not knowing arsenic was a poison that built up inside. It worked at first. Small doses made skin look pale and even, which was the style then. But trouble came fast. By the second month, about 1 in 5 users got sick. Vomiting, hair falling out, stomach cramps. Doctors later found over 1,000 deaths tied to arsenic poisoning from 1900 to 1930. A single gram could kill, and these cookies added up to that over time. Still, beauty shops pushed them. In England, they cost a penny each, and 30% of women in London tried them, surveys said. People trusted the hype since science wasn't big at that time. Eating them took guts. Women nibbled one with tea, waiting weeks for results. Some ate 2 daily, speeding up the poison. By 1950, laws banned arsenic in food after tests showed it wrecked livers and hearts. In the US, over 200 companies got shut down for selling it. Back then, no one blinked, as about 1 in 10 beauty products had risky stuff like this. Poor people used it less, maybe 5%, since cookies weren't cheap. Rich ladies led the trend, dyeing their skin perfectly until it killed them. That one really got me, but the next story takes it to a whole new level. If you found this video helpful so far, hit the like button and drop a comment with your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think. Keep watching. Number 5. Poison kiss. In 1600s Italy, women turned makeup into murder. They used aquatana, a mix of arsenic and nightshade, as blush. This started around 1650 and went on for decades. They dabbed about 0.2 grams on their cheeks, enough to look rosy, but one kiss could kill. According to court records, over 600 men died from it between 1650 and 1670. Wives stuck in bad marriages loved it. The poison worked slowly, taking hours or days, so no one suspected at first. A single touch to the lips meant death, and it happened a lot. Making it was risky. Women boiled arsenic and nightshade plants, about 2 ounces each, or 56 grams, into a paste. One slip, like breathing the fumes, killed them instead. About 1 in 10 users died that way, according to old logs. Still, they kept it secret. In Venice, over 50 women got caught selling it by 1660. It cost a fortune, like up to 5 gold coins. Or a month's pay. Only rich ladies could buy it, maybe 2% of the population, while poor people stuck to regular makeup. They applied it carefully, as they used a small brush to put it on, waiting 10 minutes to dry. The husbands never knew until it was too late. By 1700, officials banned it after trials showed over 1,000 deaths total. Poison makers faced jail, or worse, as about 20 got executed. Still, some women saw it as freedom. It gave them power when divorce wasn't allowed. Less than 1% kept using it after the ban, hidden in basements. I was still reeling from that, and then I found out about another wild thing people did. Number 4. Black smile. In old Japan, women dyed their teeth black for beauty. They called it ohaguro, and it started around AD 800. Young girls, about 12 or 13, mixed about 2 ounces, or 56 grams of iron filings with vinegar and tea into a dark paste. They brushed it on their teeth every few days, turning them jet black. Over 70% of noble women did this by the 1100s, according to old scrolls. It wasn't just looks. The dye protected teeth, as studies found that graves from AD 900 had black teeth with less decay than normal ones. About 1 in 3 still had perfect teeth after 50 years. They kept it up for life. Married women especially loved it since black teeth showed they were grown and settled. It took time. Mixing the paste took 30 minutes, and brushing added another 10. By the 1600s, historians estimated that over 2 million women used it yearly. Poor people tried it too, but only about 10% could afford the iron. The rich stood out since black teeth popping against pale skin was a big deal then. Cleaning wasn't easy. They rinsed with water, but stains stuck forever. It lasted centuries. Even in the 1800s, about 5% of women kept doing it. Western ideas killed it off by 1900 as white teeth became the new thing. Still, it was huge, as less than 1% of people worldwide ever tried anything like it. That got me thinking, but you won't guess what's next. Number 3. Mouse smiles. In ancient Egypt, people wanted clean teeth, so they crushed mice to make toothpaste. This started around 1500 BC and went on for centuries. They caught mice, as over 10 million roamed Egypt yearly back then, and smashed them with stones. About 2 mice, or 50 grams, got mixed with ash and myrrh into a gritty paste. They rubbed it on with twigs since brushes didn't exist. According to findings, over 20% of mummies from that time had decent teeth, so it was common. Rich people led the way, as only about 5% of regular people could catch enough mice. They thought it worked great. Ash scrubbed stains and myrrh smelled nice, and about 1 ounce, or 28 grams, went into each batch. Studies say ash helped a bit, but mice added nothing special. Still, they kept at it. Over 1,000 tooth cleaning tools turned up in tombs, and 1 in 3 had mouse bits stuck on them. It took time, as grinding mice took 20 minutes, and rubbing it on added another 10 minutes. Poor people used salt instead, which was cheaper. Old records hint that teeth stayed white for about 30% of users. It wasn't pretty, the paste smelled bad, and bits got stuck in gums. They made it weekly, using up to 5 hours to prepare enough for a family. By 1000 BC, salt took over since about 80% switched, leaving mouse paste for the diehards. Less than 2% of people worldwide ever tried it, historians guess. I had to double check that one, and the next part will make you wonder too. Number 2. Urine shine. In ancient Rome, people chased white teeth, so they swished urine in their mouths. This started around 100 BC and lasted until AD 400. They collected pee, about 1 gallon or 3.8 liters daily, and let it sit for weeks. This lets ammonia build up with around 2% per batch, and they use it as mouthwash. A poet named Catullus wrote about it in 50 BC, saying his smile glowed. According to trade logs, over 1,000 gallons came from Portugal yearly, because Romans thought it was the best. Old records reported about 30% of rich people used it, since they could pay for imports. They gargled hard, about 1 cup, or 0.24 liters, went in each time, swished for 5 minutes. Ammonia whitened teeth. Science later proved that it strips stains off. According to studies of ancient Romans, over 50% of users had cleaner teeth than non-users. It took effort, like collecting and storing pee used up 2 hours daily. Poor people stuck to salt water, which only 10% could afford to fancy up. Traders charged a penny per gallon, a day's wage back then. Teeth stayed bright for about 1 in 3 users long term, according to old records. They didn't flinch, pee got bottled in clay jars, and they rinsed twice daily. By AD 500, mint pastes replaced it as over 80% switched, leaving urine for the stubborn few. Historians say less than 1% of people worldwide ever tried it. That was hard to imagine, but stick around, the last one tops it all. Number 1. Worm feast. In Victorian England, thin waists were everything, so women ate live tapeworms. This began around 1840 and peaked by 1890. They bought worm cysts, about 15 cents a pop, and swallowed them with milk. Over 3,000 women used them yearly in London. The worms grew inside, reaching 25 feet, or 7.6 meters, in a month. They sucked up about 1 pound, or 0.45 kilograms of food daily, making women drop 15 pounds, or 6.8 kilograms fast. Old records suggest that 1 in 5 lost too much weight and got weak. It turned ugly quickly. Worms caused bloating and pain, and over 30% felt sick. About 150 women died from it between 1850 and 1870. They took harsh drugs to kill the worms, with about 2 ounces or 56 grams of powder downed in a week. That made them vomit for days. Still, beauty sellers pushed it. Over 8,000 ads ran in papers by 1880, promising a slim secret. Only rich people could buy in, as about just 3% of poor women tried it. They hid it well. The women ate extra meat, about 3 pounds or 1.4 kilograms weekly, to keep the worms happy. They checked their stomachs daily, feeling for movement. By 1910, science shut it down, as over 400 cases showed worms tore up insides. Laws banned it in 1925, but some kept going, as about 1% snuck it into the 1940s. That tops every wild beauty trick I found. We've reached the end of the video. Like and subscribe for more content if you enjoyed it. Comment below about your most unusual part. Thanks for watching.